Ever find yourself scrolling through those travel blogs, and feeling that pull between the must-see landmarks and like those off-the-beaten-path adventures?
Right. Yeah.
Today we're going to go beyond just the where of travel
Yeah.
and really dig into like the why. Why do we make these choices?
Absolutely. It's fascinating how much our decision making,
Yeah.
even when it's something as exciting as travel,
Yeah.
how much of it is driven by things we're not even aware of.
Totally. So we're taking a deep dive today into the psychology of tourism. We're going to uncover those hidden forces that are kind of shaping our journeys from the very beginning, like from when we start daydreaming about a getaway.
Yeah.
And we've got some interesting research to kind of guide us along the way.
We do. We do. This particular study breaks that whole tourist journey down into 3 stages. And we're going to start with that pre-trip phase.
Okay.
That exciting whirlwind of possibilities before you even pack your bags.
Oh, that's the best. It's exciting, but oh my gosh, the information overload.
Right.
It can be too much. You're bombarded with choices, destinations, hotels, activities. It's like you need a vacation just to plan your vacation.
It's very true. And when we're faced with that, like that just overwhelming amount of information, our brains, they've got to figure out these shortcuts.
Yeah.
And they're called heuristics.
Heuristics, okay.
Heuristics, they help us make decisions quicker.
Okay, so like that time I picked a hotel just based on like my friend's glowing review.
Yes.
Even though, honestly, she and I have very different travel styles.
That is a classic example. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's relying on that mental shortcut. Like you trust your friend.
Yeah.
You trust their opinion.
Yeah.
And it's a way to simplify a very complicated decision.
It is.
But, and as you probably found out,
Yes.
the shortcuts don't always lead you in the right direction.
Tell me about it. I ended up like at this luxurious spa retreat, which great, but what I really wanted was like a bustling city adventure.
Yeah.
And it made me realize how much, even subconsciously, how we're swayed by how information is shown to us. You know what I mean?
Totally, yeah. And that's called framing effects.
Okay.
It's incredibly powerful, and you see it all the time in tourism and marketing. Because, like, think about it. A destination, if they tell you it's an exclusive paradise, that sounds way more alluring than just like a budget-friendly getaway, right? Even if it's the same place.
Totally.
They just change the price tag.
Yeah. Oh, it's like those before and after photos. It's the same subject, maybe different lighting.
Totally.
And it changes how you see it.
Yeah.
And speaking of perception, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've noticed if there's one thing about a place that I find positive, my brain's like, well, then everything else must be amazing too.
Of course. That's the halo effect.
Okay, the halo effect.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, you see these amazing pictures of a really remote island.
Right.
And these pristine beaches.
Real.
Your brain is going to tell you instinctively, oh, well, the food must be amazing. The culture must be great. The whole vibe must be amazing.
It's paradise.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you have zero evidence to support that.
It's so true. It's like judging a book by its cover, or I guess in this case, a destination by its Instagram-worthy beaches.
Exactly.
But then there's also, I feel like, these other factors that we don't even realize that kind of sneak into how we make decisions.
Right.
Like, I'm thinking about how we see destinations portrayed in the media.
Yeah.
Or even, like, stereotypes.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like that can really influence us.
Big time. You're right on the money with that.
Yeah.
You're talking about social biases.
Okay.
And they play a huge role in how we see different places.
So, like, if I see a news story and it's about, I don't know, someone who got their pocket picked, am I going to be less likely to visit that city, even if statistically it's as safe as any other tourist destination?
It happens all the time. That one news report can make you afraid of an entire city.
It's true. It's true. It's a good reminder to be, like, mindful of those biases that we might not even realize we have.
Yeah.
And to look a little deeper than those first impressions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've seen how easily our brains can be swayed in all that pre-trip excitement. But what happens when we actually get there?
Yeah, what happens when we arrive?
What happens when those vacation vibes really kick in? Get ready, because things are going to get even more interesting.
So imagine this, okay? You've just arrived, your bags are like in the hotel room, and that travel high is like really kicking in.
Oh, yeah.
But then that carefully planned budget
Mm-hmm.
kind of goes out the window.
Oh, it's Like, my treat yourself mentality just takes over when I'm on vacation.
Right.
€10 for gelato.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Totally worth it. This study, they talk about present bias.
Okay.
And that's exactly what that is.
Right.
We get so caught up in the moment
Right.
that we're just like, yes, immediate gratification. I want it now.
Yes.
Even if it means maybe, next year's trip
Right.
might be a little less exciting.
Exactly. Or non-existent.
Right.
But speaking of those maybe questionable financial decisions on vacation,
Yeah.
I am so guilty of this.
Yeah.
Sticking with a plan, even if it's not great.
Oh, tell me more.
Just because I've already paid for it, you know.
The sunk cost fallacy.
It cost you.
It gets us every time, right? Like that non-refundable hotel.
Yeah.
Suddenly feels like a ball and chain when you find that charming little boutique hotel just down the street.
It's like my brain just cannot compute that there might be something better.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
more enjoyable.
We get so fixated on what we've already put in, right?
Mhm.
The time, the money, even just the mental energy of planning it all out.
Yes.
And we convince ourselves, well, we got to see it through,
Right.
even if it means sacrificing some enjoyment,
Right. And I feel like that applies to more than just spending.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what about when I do this sometimes when I'm traveling
Yeah.
and I have this jam-packed itinerary
Yes.
and I'm like, well, I have to do it because that's the plan.
Right.
Even if I'd rather just like wander through a local market.
Exactly. It's like we feel this need to get our money's worth.
Right. Yes.
Like we have to check off every single thing on that list.
Yeah.
But sometimes, honestly, the best moments, the most filling moments
Yes.
come from just embracing spontaneity,
Totally.
being open to those deviations,
It's about finding that balance, right?
Right.
Between like wanting to have some structure,
Right.
but also being open to
Yeah.
those random things that you might never experience if you don't just like go with the flow a little bit.
Absolutely. It's about being present
Yeah.
in a way
Yeah.
that allows for those serendipitous moments,
Yes.
those little discoveries
Right.
that often become those travel stories that we share.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The best wins.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, let's talk about what happens when we're back home. The suitcases are put away, laundry's maybe done.
Maybe, yeah.
We're holding on to those memories.
Yes.
But are those memories always accurate?
It's so interesting you say that
Yeah.
because, this research actually highlights how those post-trip memories,
Okay.
the stories we tell, both to ourselves and other people, they're often influenced by, well, our brains, basically,
Right.
and these cognitive filters that we all have.
It's so true because I'm already thinking about, like, when I think back on a trip,
Yeah.
it's always the most intense moments,
Yes.
the good and the bad, that
Yeah.
I seem to remember most vividly,
Of course.
which I feel like can sometimes paint an inaccurate picture of the whole experience.
Absolutely. And you just perfectly described recall bias.
Recall bias. Okay.
Yeah. It's where we give more weight to those highs and lows. Okay. Those peaks and valleys.
Right.
And we kind of gloss over those maybe more everyday parts.
Right.
Those more mundane parts that actually make up most of the trip, really.
Oh, that's so interesting because now I'm thinking about, like, if we remember those peaks most strongly,
Yes.
like the amazing meal I had on my last night of a trip, does that make me forget about, like, the mediocre hotel breakfast I had every day for a week?
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
And that's a classic example
Right.
of how those peak experiences, especially towards the end of a trip,
Okay.
they can have a disproportionate influence on how we remember the whole thing.
So I might go back to a place just because of one amazing dinner.
It's very possible.
Wow.
And speaking of influences, let's not forget about nostalgia.
Oh, nostalgia.
Right. Suddenly that, not so great hostel room
Great.
becomes charming and rustic in our memories.
It's true. It's like we've got these rose-colored glasses on,
We do.
and we're just remembering the best parts.
We do. It's like our brains are hardwired to romanticize the past,
Right.
and travel memories are no exception.
Yeah. Yeah, we're editing out the not-so-glamorous parts in our minds.
We are.
But that can be dangerous, though, right?
It can.
Because then we're chasing after this, like, idealized version of a trip
Right.
that never really existed.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you think about how social media plays into all of this.
Oh,
Right? Because now it's not just our own memories.
right.
It's everyone else's highlight reels, too.
It's true. I feel like social media can make it seem like everyone's having a better vacation than me.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's this pressure now
Oh, yeah.
to show off those perfect
They're
moments.
best of the best.
Yes, the stunning scenery,
Right.
the delicious food, those, like, you can't even imagine how amazing this is. Adventures.
Right.
And, this study, they talk about something called social sharing bias.
Oh, interesting. Social sharing bias.
Yeah, it's like we're all competing for the best vacation ever award,
Right, exactly.
which, can actually steal the joy from our own experiences.
Right, because if we're so focused on getting that perfect Instagram shot,
Right.
we're not really present
Exactly.
for the actual experience.
You miss it, and then you start planning trips
Right.
based on how Instagrammable they'll be, instead of thinking about what would truly bring you joy.
Right, right. So how do we break free? How do we escape these biases?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Just recognizing these biases exist.
Yeah.
Understanding how our brains try to, categorize and simplify our experiences.
Right.
It allows us to be more intentional,
Yeah. Yeah.
both about how we remember our trips
Okay.
and how we plan our future adventures.
So the next time I catch myself scrolling through travel blogs or really romanticizing a past trip,
Yeah,
I need to remember that there's always more to the story
there is.
than what, meets the eye or shows up on the gram.
Absolutely. Ask yourself, what really resonated with me on that trip? What experiences, big or small, actually stuck with me?
Right.
And let those be your guide.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so suitcases are put away, laundry's maybe done,
Maybe.
but we're holding on to those travel memories.
Right.
But are those memories always a true reflection of the trip? You know what I mean?
It's interesting you say that, because this research actually highlights how those post-trip memories,
Yeah.
the stories we tell ourselves and other people, are often shaped by, our brains.
Right.
All those cognitive filters that we have.
I'm thinking about it now, even just thinking back on trips I've taken.
Yeah.
It's always the most intense moments, good or bad,
Yes.
that seem to stick out the most.
Of course.
And I feel like sometimes that can really skew, the overall picture.
Absolutely. You just perfectly described recall bias.
Okay, recall bias.
Yeah. It's that tendency to put more emphasis on the highs and the lows.
Right.
And kind of gloss over those more everyday, mundane parts of a trip.
Right, right.
That honestly make up, probably most of the experience.
That's so interesting because now I'm thinking
Yeah.
if we're wired to remember those peaks, right?
Right.
Okay, that incredible meal I had on the last night of my trip.
Yes.
Does that then make me completely forget about the mediocre hotel breakfast I had every day for a week?
It absolutely can.
Wow.
And that's a classic example of how those peak experiences, especially those that happen toward the end of a trip, they can have a disproportionate influence on how we remember the whole thing.
So I might go back to a place rebook a whole trip based on one amazing dinner.
It's possible. It happens.
Wow, it's powerful stuff. And speaking of influential factors, let's not forget about good old nostalgia.
Oh, nostalgia.
Yeah.
Right. Suddenly that, maybe cramped kind of dingy hostel room
Yes.
becomes charming and rustic in our memories.
Yes. It's we put on those rose-colored glasses.
We do. We do.
And we're only remembering the best parts.
It's like our brains are hardwired for that,
Yeah.
to romanticize the past a little bit.
Right.
And travel memories are no exception.
So true. Yeah, it's our brains are doing this editing process, right?
Yes.
We're cutting out all the not-so-glamorous parts.
We're editing out the bad parts and we're just keeping the highlight reel.
But that can be dangerous, right?
It can.
Because then we're chasing after this, ideal, perfect version of a trip.
Exactly.
That honestly probably never even happened.
Exactly. We create this, fantasy almost.
Right.
And then we're disappointed when reality doesn't quite live up.
Yes. And then it gets even more interesting, I feel when you think about how social media plays into all this.
Oh, absolutely. Because now it's not just our own memories that we're contending with, right?
Yeah.
It's everyone else's highlight reels, too.
Right. And social media can make it seem like everyone's vacation is just sunshine and rainbows.
Right. And everyone's having a better time than you are.
Exactly. Exactly. And, then there's that pressure.
All right. Huge pressure.
To present those perfect moments online.
The most picture-perfect version of every experience. Yeah.
Right. So it's we're all competing for the best vacation ever award.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. It's this unspoken competition.
Right. And I feel that can actually take us out of the moment.
It can. It can really steal the joy from our own experiences if we're so busy trying to capture the perfect photo.
Yes, because if we're so busy trying to get that Instagram shot, are we really even there?
Right. You're not present. You miss it.
Okay, so how do we escape it? How do we break free from these biases?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. How do we hold on to the genuine memories?
I think it starts with awareness,
Okay.
just acknowledging that these biases exist,
Right.
understanding that our brains are constantly trying to, like, categorize and simplify everything.
Right, right.
And I think just being aware of that
Yeah.
allows us to be a little bit more intentional,
Right.
both in how we remember our trips and how we plan future ones.
So next time I find myself like endlessly scrolling through those travel blogs,
Yeah.
or maybe even like overly romanticizing a past trip, I need to take a step back and just remember, like,
Right.
there's more to the story than what I'm seeing.
There always is.
Right. It's about like what really resonated, what really stuck with me.
What truly resonated with you.
Yeah, and using that to guide those future adventures.
Let that be your compass.
I love that. Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the psychology of travel. We explored those hidden forces shaping our choices before, during, and after our journeys. So go forth, plan those fulfilling adventures, and of course, share those experiences with us. Until next time, happy travels.